Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to head to Indianapolis Motor Speedway, not for the Brickyard 500, but for week 6 of the Octane Online Racing European Sprint Series. Hello everybody, my name is Nick Amon. I'd like to welcome you back to the broadcast after our week off. And joining me in the booth, as always, is going to be Mr. Simon Bauer. Kevin will not be joining us here this evening, but we'll see him later on in the North American broadcast. But Simon, how have you been?
Hello, good evening. I've been beautiful. I've had my own share of races at this racetrack, so I'm sure I can tell you plenty about that as the stream goes on. But yeah, a little bit lonely without Kevin in here today, but we'll make do. But speaking of lonely, looks a bit sparse on the track right now as well. Only 13 cars, which is pretty understandable, I gotta say though. Since we are nearing the end of the season and Indy isn't an amazingly well-liked track among the drivers, so, well, 13 is not a horrible turnout.
No, and looking at the registration, or the attendance sheet rather, we are looking at 13, so everybody who has noted that they will be here, they are here, so in that regard, job well done, 100%.
Thank them for showing up.
Yeah, of course, as always. We always enjoy, no matter how many drivers are on the grid, at least, them showing up and putting on a bit of a show for us on our little Thursday evenings or afternoons, wherever you may be in the world. I have not had time to drive at Indy, unfortunately. Have you?
Yeah, plenty. Too much, you could say.
All right, well then, why not take us through the track a little bit? Let us know. We're here with Ivan Kearns right now, so why not use him as our pedestal?
Right, let's do it. Beautiful. So, start-finish straight, very interesting. Well, I guess we're boarding the lap. That's good timing.
We'll find someone who's just about. All right, here, Coelho.
All right, on board with Mr. Coelho, and hit the wall a tiny bit. That can happen. Those walls are very, very close to the track, and you want to be close to them, but not a huge thing happens when you hit them. But yeah, here we go. Between 500 and 400, closer to the 400 feet board is where you're gonna brake. Brake a lot for the first corner because it's a very slow 90 right. Then you carefully accelerate through that left, flat through the right, and then very early after the right-hander you want to be braking and hitting that apex. It's a very difficult apex to hit. Quite blind around here. After that, flat right-hander, and go as far to the right of the track as you possibly can for this very, very flowing and long left-hander. You gotta be really careful on throttle application. Coming into a very, very awkward right-hander, where you really want to be... Yeah, you're gonna have a tough time figuring out where to accelerate. But then we have this little mini back straight here, braking right around that second red board for another 90 left-hander. Then this tiny little flowing section back here that I actually quite enjoy. All in the second gear, left, right, left, and then right again. You can cut a lot over that curb. Then we go back on the oval for just a few meters with a very, very interesting corner where you actually brake before all the braking boards, before the 300 feet board, for this very slow 90-degree right-hander. A little bit of an acceleration zone, and then right back down to first gear for this left-hander, and then from here on out it's flat back to the starting line.
Well, that's certainly a lot better than I would have done if I had gotten my rig set up. I do try to get at least some laps in on new tracks before the broadcast. That way I'm at least, somewhat familiar with what we're rocking here. So I'm sure at some point I'll hop back on the sim and do some laps here around Indy, because it does look like it's a lot of fun.
Well, I'm not a huge fan of it personally, but it is a very unique track and quite a tricky one. And tricky not in the fact that you're going to be crashing all day long, but more tricky in the fact that it's going to make it hard for you to be really consistent, because you have a lot of awkward corners, especially the two we're coming on right now with Coelho. The right-hander of turn 7, that is really, really awkward, going on that really extremely wide back straight. You're going to be accelerating a lot earlier than, well, you expect from first looking at that corner. But then there's also really, really low grip surface on the infield part. The oval part, of course, has a lot of grip, but you're going to be spending very little time there, and you're basically only ever braking there, not really doing much else. So the infield part is very slippery, and especially, turn 6, the 180 left is really, really difficult to get a proper acceleration out of. So For me personally, not an amazing track, but it can lead to some good fighting if you're fast enough on the straights to actually send one down on, well, into turn one. Then you can go side by side through turn one and right away go for the switch back into turn two, and then same thing into turn three, and so on and so on. But the rest of the lap is very much yeah, a one-line track, unless the car in front that you're trying to overtake makes a mistake. It's only really gonna happen at the end of the straight, and then you're gonna have to carry it through sector one. But yeah, it's a tricky one. It's also tricky to explain on the go, especially on board. We just went with Coelho. Definitely the first time I've done that, and didn't feel much easier than driving here to commentate on board, but it was fun.
I'm sure it's one of those things where you just sort of do it, and like in your head it makes perfect sense. You know, you're just like, oh, I gotta, you know, hit the turn like this, I gotta brake here, shift here. So I'm sure it's just one of those situations.
Yeah, just whatever pops into your mind when you see the corner, just blurt it out and then try to get that out as quickly as possible before you get to the next corner. But
do as I do.
Yep. I guess we can make that a recurring segment. I'm down for that.
Simon Bowers, do as I do. You know what? I would watch that 100%. I would absolutely spend my free time watching that.
All right.
Maybe we'll see for next season. And speaking of next season, registrations are now open for the Simrig Sprint Series. We actually do have a sponsor now, which is going to be pretty sweet. So registrations for that are open. Season starts on October 20th, if I remember correctly. So that will be open, of course, for Asia Pacific, EU, and NA. So if you're looking to move up from the Rookie Series and out into the wonderful world of the Sprint Showcase, if you want to call it that, or the Battlefield, then now is the time to do so. It's completely free. No money at all is being spent on your behalf to race. Simon, are you maybe going to be signing up for next season?
I think, if anything, I'm gonna return to the commentating booth.
Okay.
If you're willing to have me.
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it, of course. I love having you here. It's very fun.
All right. But I have plenty of other series that I'm racing in. I've had my 3 seasons in OOR sprints, so I'm happy to take a little bit of a break. And I'll be back eventually, but until then, I'm actually really enjoying this little commentating gig.
It is a lot of fun. It's a nice change in dynamic. It's for next season, I would like to race. I'm kind of hoping that we get someone for EU broadcast, because then I could have no problem just popping in there and you know, taking a little bit of your territory, as it were, for my personal amusement. But if that's not in the cards, then hey, you know, I got no problem coming back to the booth for both EU and NA.
All right, but fingers crossed things work out as you hope they will.
Yeah, I really want to race.
And also, I can imagine that. Also, fingers crossed for Mr. Cuthbert in the number 13, who's saying that hopefully he's not going to be having any ping issues this time. He's had an engineer out yesterday who found and fixed a few faults with the apparently, well, internet line to the house. So fingers crossed for him. Also, good luck, Lasse Skøyen, is what Mardag is saying, so same from us. Good luck to Lasse and good luck to everyone else, of course. We are into qualifying, and we have the first lap started, I believe, by Skøyen right away.
Yeah, right in the big old Boatley. So I don't know how well this car handles around this track. Again, I haven't really hopped into Indy, or even just in the sim in general. My time has been being focused on other things, some productive, some not. But I'm sure our Norwegian friend here will give us a nice little showing of what the Bentley can do in these opening laps. Of course, drivers do have to take the time to get the tires up to temperature and to pressure, get the brakes up to temperature, and then we should start seeing a lot of the faster laps come in. But it looks like for now it's going to be nice and sunny. The track is greasy, though.
Well, that's gonna make things really interesting. The track feels greasy as it is, even on an optimum track, so I can't imagine what it's like to drive on this thing out there right now. So we'll see if we're gonna have a lot of people going wide, a lot of people spinning, but right now, so far, looking pretty stable from Sky.
Yeah, well, heaven forbid the clouds open up and it starts raining, then I'm sure it's going to be an absolute mess trying to get around this track here. As Sky had a little bit of oil there, but manages to keep that Bentley in check, so this lap should be counting as he heads onto the oval for just a moment. Before that, as you said, brake marker, which you just go before it, sweep through the right and then the left, and then you're back onto the main straight for a bit. You know, I will say, speaking of the straights here on the track, the backstretch really reminds me of Sebring in a way, with how wide you can go, like beyond where you would think.
I couldn't comment on that. I know basically nothing about Sebring as from a driving perspective.
Ah, see, that's your problem. You don't know anything about it. Neither do I. I haven't driven on it. I've watched it. It's a lot of fun. But right now, it's Coelho on top right now. 138.077. Skyen with a 39.337. So quite a ways back in terms of speed, but there can definitely be some improvements. The qualifying session is still young, still just a smidge over 10 minutes to go, and it looks like a lot of drivers are still making their way around the track. The next person closest is actually Evan Cairns, who just kisses the wall there. He's going to pull off to the side and sort of abort that lap. And across the line is the Audi.
And track has already gone up too fast, so whoever's on a lap right now, or hasn't really set a lap yet, is definitely going to have a bit of an advantage over those very, very early runners. But you can see, okay, we have Felgen right now, putting in an amazing lap compared to the second fastest lap right now. 36.2. Actually, we have a new second fastest lap as well, a 37.2 from Michaels. But yeah, those early laps that we saw coming in while the track was still greasy, a 38.0 from Coelho, that is quite a way off of, you know, proper optimum conditions. So you can see how slow that track really was just then. And it's still quite far off from optimum conditions, but it's definitely going to be speeding up as time goes on. And perhaps we can go up to an optimum track by the end of this qualifying.
Well, speaking of up, it's Ryan Cuthbert right now, crossing the line in P2 with a 37.1. That's still almost a full second off of Felgen. I mean, that just goes to show you how much the Ferrari has been practicing here, unless he's maybe done a little bit, but maybe the Ferrari's a bit powerful here.
Ferrari is one of the more powerful cars around here for sure.
I'll definitely put that to good use.
We know the pace that Felgen has, even on tracks where the Ferrari is a less powerful force. So two wonderfully powerful things working together. Good car, good driver, and you're gonna have a quite far off pole position. Actually, Hazel has just moved up into P2, only 0.2 off, and there we go. All right, things are moving fast.
Right back.
Things are really moving fast. Riding very briefly takes a provisional pole position with a 35.5, but then Felgen completes his next lap with a 35.2, and we're getting relatively close to the times that we would be expecting on an optimum track, which are probably in the mid-34s for Felgen.
Probably. We'll have to wait and see. And the rest of these drivers, maybe high 30, maybe high 34s, very low 35s, and then the rest of the field are probably looking at about 35, 36 seconds on the lap timer. But for right now, it is Felgen on top with Vining, Michaels, Hazel, Parks in the top 5. Hearn just getting leapfrogged by Cuthbert, so 6 and 7 for them. Partez, Skyen, and Laer, the next 5 down, and then it's Coelho, and Humans and Cairns have yet to set a time. Looks like Humans is currently out on a flying lap, and Evan Cairns appears to also be on a flying lap here just now, so we'll see where these two end up by the end of their qualifying laps. And we look around the grid. Partez here coming onto the front straight. He is currently up by about 0.4, so this should put him right up into P7 over Herd and Skyen. So that pushes them down, and we've got Vining here about even with himself, and just behind is actually Felgen, who looks to be getting maybe a bit of a slipstream as he's got some pace under those tires. He will improve to a 35.0, so we're closing in on that 34 barrier.
We're getting close, and as I said, this track is very difficult to be perfectly consistent on. So even on a relatively long qualifying session like this, it's not going to be super easy to get a clean lap in without making any sort of mistake in one corner or the other. So it's not only going to be a show of obviously who has the ultimate pace around here in qualifying, but also who can actually put a clean lap together.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be tricky, especially some of these drivers probably have more time on the track than others. So we've got Humans coming through with a qualifying time enough for P11, so it's just Cairns right now, who I believe is on a flying lap, so this should be setting his position just in the next couple of seconds as he crosses the line here, and it is going to put him into P11. So Humans actually gets jumped by Lair, so now Humans is down in 13th position, and we just take a quick look around. Partez, who was running pretty well up at the top early on, is now sitting in P10, although is on an improvement of just a few tenths. So as he crosses the line, it is enough for P5, so just leaping over everybody, it seems like. So for the time being, for the next 5-6 minutes, Partez is claiming ownership of P5, but it's going to be a question to see if he can hold on to that.
Very close gaps in the midfield right now, especially going from P4 to, I want to say, yeah, P11. We have a few things in there where there's only 200s separating the drivers. So at the front, quite a big margin, half a second between Felgen and Vining right now, and then another almost half a second between Vining and Parks. But the midfield is very, very close today.
Yeah, it is. So that's probably going to be where we're sitting at the most. Obviously, Felgen's time, almost half a second up, so he won't be too much of a concern unless he makes a massive error. Humans here cross the line into P12. Partez did get overtaken by Michaels for that P5, but there's still 5 minutes left, so there should be plenty of time to get another lap in. Yvonne Cairns here, 36.887 was his best lap as well as his last lap, and he finds himself 3 tenths up right now, so if he can stitch this together nicely, this could be a P9 and maybe even a P8 start, at least for the time being. And there it is across the bricks for P9, so sitting on that top 10, Cuthbert is pushed down to P10, and Heron is actually outside of that top 10. Heron, or Hearn, I don't know, I say Heron because I see Cairns and it just sort of transfers over, my apologies. Out on a fly, or out on his out lap, he's got a couple drivers behind on their flyers, so we will we'll see what gets done there. Delilah Hazel, have not given her enough attention. Black equals Stewart's mad. Well, that's a very black looking Audi, so Stewart's must be absolutely furious. But who's going to be more furious than Coelho, as his Audi is bested by the Finn? And speaking of Audi, it's Casper Lair. 7 tenths up. This should overtake at least Humans, maybe Hearn. Across the line, and he's going to do a little better than that. Cuthbert and Cairns getting pushed aside. So Audi, all of them in the top 10 here in qualifying. 3.5 minutes on the clock.
And 3 tenths right now, all the way from P3 to P8. So very, very close margins. If Partez goes in there and improves by 3 or 4 tenths, then he will move up into P3. So as I said, really still very tight margins in the midfield, so these last 3 minutes of the qualifying could be impressive, or could be exciting.
Most likely. Partez right now on an out lap, so we'll see what his pace is looking like as he gets back around. Cairns just now actually overtook Lair for that P9, so Audi looking, maybe losing out on all their cars in the top 10. Cuthbert is behind at the moment, but he is starting another flying lap, so he'll have a chance to maybe snag the P10. It just has to be a little bit more than a tenth up, which I don't think should be too hard for him. A very consistent driver, of course, here in the OOR European Series. You can see his team name, praying to the ping gods. Hopefully his prayers will be answered in the race. It's never fun when a driver gets disconnected like that.
Yeah, for sure. Meanwhile, Felgen has finally moved to the 34s, but just barely a 34.99, since it looks like the track isn't really getting much faster anymore. We've been stuck at this, obviously officially fast track right now for quite a while. Probably not going to get up into optimum in these final 2 minutes. So probably these high 34s that we're seeing from Felgen are going to be the status quo for this qualifying. Unless he pulls another insane lap out of the bag, which I wouldn't put past him.
No, not at all. He seems to be hovering around, gaining a 10th on his personal best and losing it, so I wouldn't be surprised if he manages to squeeze out just that last little bit of pace from this this lemon-flavored Ferrari. As he crosses the line here, will he improve? No, he will not. He'll miss out by 2/10. But improvements are looking pretty good for Ryan Cuthbert. This is the man who could potentially push the third Audi out of that top 10. He finds himself about 3/10 up as he's getting ready to cross the line once more. So if he can just keep it together, which it looks like he should. Casper, my friend, the Ghostbusters have been called. You've been pushed out of P10, and Cuthbert all the way up to P8. What an incredible improvement out of him.
And still, as our drivers are on their final laps now, pretty much, still a lot of things that can happen. Still very close gaps. Felgen right now still on a lap. Looking to be exactly even right now with his previous best. So let's look a bit further down the field. We have Parks on quite an improvement right now. Let's have a look. If he can keep that together, that's half a second of an improvement.
Yeah, that could
which might just about be able to move him into P2.
It should. I wouldn't be too surprised if Ferrari won too. Something the F1 team is not familiar with at the moment, and he does make it up into that front row with Felgen. And he still has time for another lap if he wants to.
And don't forget, Parks is a Pro-Am driver, very much a Pro-Am leader right now. 8/10 faster than P2 in the Pro-Am division right now in qualifying. That is the power of the Ferrari. Not only the power of the Ferrari, of course. We've always seen Parks very, very far up the field in Pro-Am. But Ferrari 1-2 is definitely not a coincidence.
No, it is not. Like you said earlier, this is a very powerful circuit for that car. And as we get to the end of qualifying, we got Michaels in P7. Hearn goes up to P10. So that'll push Cairns and Laer down. So they're actually all done. Everyone in pit is pretty much all set for the time being. You can see Cuthbert in the background right there, just chilling outside of pit lane. Delilah Hazel, top 5 start at the moment, and not on an improvement, maybe a few hundredths, but nothing to really worry about because the only other person, there she goes. Almost a perfect pirouette right all the way through. I respect the hustle. I respect the grind.
Style points for sure.
Yeah. Does the OOR reward style points?
Well, I do.
All right. Well, there we go. Quilio doesn't improve.
Actually, steals the fastest final sector of the qualifying, but still 400ths of a Vining. Just about didn't manage to move up another spot.
No, and Parks does improve by a couple of hundredths, but he is still almost 4/10 off of his fellow Ferrari driver Felgen in first. A 34.99. That is a very difficult time to beat. I would have been surprised if anyone managed to pull that one off,
especially on a fast track.
Absolutely. Yeah,
so here we go.
It's very difficult.
Things are looking optimum right now.
They are, and the weather looks to be staying relatively reasonable here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I've always been a fan of this circuit, especially with the Indy 500. I try to watch it when I can, but it's always a fun race.
Oh, for sure, and it's gonna be a fun one to watch. It's gonna be a very tricky one to drive, however. So, fingers crossed for all of these drivers, and good luck to all of them.
Of course, we don't have we're not using the full oval. As fun as that would be, you know, I'm always used to seeing Indy cars and stock cars and all the others, like super modifieds on these ovals. I want to see these cars just do an oval race.
It's a bit of a shame, to be fair, that the Indy road course doesn't use more of the oval.
I know.
You basically only have the start-finish straight, and you have this tiny little, let's call it a 100-meter stretch before, in the third sector. But there's a lot more on offer there, so definitely a shame that we're not taking a full oval corner, but also maybe for the tire manufacturers a bit of a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, I mean, I know that when the Rolex 24 at Daytona goes on, they use quite a bit of the oval circuit. So maybe someday, if the powers that be with this game and the series that we try to emulate, races at Daytona, maybe we get it.
And let's not mention the infamous F1 race, which I'm not even sure which year it was. 2005, maybe?
I
That it?
think it was 05. The Indianapolis
05.
with the tires.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely gonna have put people off of using any of these oval corners, because there is a configuration of Indy that uses the final corner of the oval in full. But this one we have right here in ACC, and that's also driven in real GT3 racing around here, has this little, let's call it a chicane, added in the final sector. But here we go. 10 seconds before our drivers are able to press start, so we should be seeing the cars drop one by one, and then the engines light up.
Yeah, well, people getting off the jacks right now, making those final adjustments for the race, for their setups, and it was the Indianapolis 2005 race, so we were correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So we were correct. No safety car today. Obviously, it's a very small grid, so there really is no need for the Ginetta safety car to be out on track. I hope we get like a Simrigs themed livery for the safety car, seeing as we'll be sponsored next season by them, which is actually very, very cool to have. But ladies and gentlemen, the cars are off. No one's starting in the pits, so Felion will be our pseudo safety car for this parade lap as we head around Indianapolis. Before the chaos unfolds, the skies are clear, the temperatures are looking good, and we are getting ready for an hour of racing here. The penultimate round for the Sprint Series before we head across the pond to France for the last race, and a format we haven't raced with in a while, the Super Sprint, to cap things off.
It's gonna be beautiful. And to Wicked Sim Racing for Mental Health in the chat, hello to you too. Do you know what exactly is happening in the UK? Because we are being told to anyone from the UK here, my sincerest condolences. I'm not sure what exactly is going on. But
well, the Queen has passed, unfortunately. Yeah, I was on TikTok and I thought it was a joke for a second, and then a couple posts later, it's like, oh no, this is like a news broadcast. This is legit. Okay, so yeah, it's a very heavy day there over in the UK for them at the moment.
That is understandable then.
96 years old for her. She served as queen for 70 years, if you can believe that. It is quite a long time for one person to hold such a position. Normally when we hear about kings and queens, it's maybe a couple decades at most, but then again, that's usually when we're talking about the medieval times. But in the modern age, in the 20th and the 21st century, Queen Elizabeth got to reign for quite a bit longer than many others.
That is hard to believe. The vast majority of people alive on this planet have never known a different queen or king of England. But let's move back to the racing. We're going double file. We're moving out of final corner now. We're lining up on the grid. Still a bit of, well, moving forward and backwards to get the proper grid positions, but here we are, moving out on the start-finish straight. Are you gonna take us to the start?
Oh, I might as well, even though you're forcing my hand. But it's green at Indianapolis. Felion getting a really good start. Same with Parks, and in the background is the number 32 BMW of Michaels going into the wall there. That is not the start you want as we head down into turn one. The very heavy braking zone on the inside is Vining into Parks. Parks trying to make a move around the outside. There's a little bit of contact, but nothing to write home about. Michaels back to the pits and the inside corner for Parks, so he's going to maintain that P2 for the time being. We actually have gone under a virtual safety car.
That was a very interesting incident right there at the start. I'm going to have a look at the replay to tell you exactly what has happened.
Yeah, I will do the same as I have the time. So we are going to hop on with Michaels to try and figure out what happened.
Race has been neutralized, so nothing to see there at the moment.
Alright, so let's see. So at the start, Partes goes for a move down the inside. Oh, that's just an unfortunate set of circumstances. So at the start of the race, I'll slow it down a little bit. So Partez gets an incredible launch and moves to the inside. That forces a bit of a defensive move from Michaels, but Delilah Hazel pulls to the exact same side of the circuit as the BMW. And then because Michaels has so much more speed and he wants to avoid an accident, he cuts back to the inside and just barely gets tapped by Partez. That sends him into the McLaren of Cuthbert. I believe that is. Yeah, that's Cuthbert, and then into the wall. So not the way you want to start your race.
That is usually the sort of stuff you'd think you'd be able to avoid with a rolling start, but as you can see, anything can happen, even here. But
Yeah.
that is... I've looked at it again, that is just a really unlucky incident. That is nothing I would really blame anyone for right now.
Yeah.
But let's see if we are going green again. We are back on the start-finish straight.
Well, if we are going green, it'd be Felion with the rights. We're actually not on the start-finish straight. We still got a couple more turns to get through.
Oh.
But I'd like the enthusiasm. We're all ready to get racing. But
It all
yeah,
looks the same around the oval.
of course. Yeah, no, that was just, like you said, it's an unfortunate thing to happen. Just nothing more than a racing incident. And you think with, like you said, the rolling starts, these can be avoided. But that front straight is rather narrow, it feels like, at times. When you go too wide, it feels like you have almost no room to work with. And, well, you saw what happened as the BMW of Michaels goes from one side of the track to the other and back again, and still in the pits with damages. Of course, like you said, race neutralized. Collision, though, is still on, so drivers need to be extra careful lest they cop a penalty. You can see everyone swerving side to side, trying to get some temperature in the tires, and Felion doing his best Kimi Räikkönen impression.
And it looks like we're going for another lap under the virtual safety car to allow Michaels to catch up, who has just come out of the pits. Still very, very far back, so he likely won't be able to catch up fully until the grid is back around, but it gives him a little bit more time to get into a slightly more decent position. But yeah, that start-finish straight, actually really wide, very wide compared to most other start-finish straights, but you have walls right at the edge, so it can feel claustrophobic if you are going side by side and you aren't used to it.
Yeah, especially with a lot of start-to-finish straights, there's runoff, and even if there are walls, there's still quite a bit of space in between the racing surface, the runoff area, and the wall, so there's at least some chance to slow down. I know one start-finish straight that I am not a fan of is the Paul Ricard, because it sort of suffers the same sort of feeling as Indianapolis, where you have the walls on the side, but it also just feels really claustrophobic.
A big problem of the start-finish straight at Paul Ricard is the pit exit, really. That makes things a lot more tricky than they already are. But yeah, I see what you mean for sure.
Yeah, and with that pit straight, you just come right out onto the racing line. There's, a lot of the times you can see accidents that happen where drivers are completely caught off guard by another driver exiting the pit lane, and they either overshoot or at worst they cause an accident.
Okay, we might actually be seeing Michaels join back up with the field as this lap goes on. He has just gone through turn 1, while the rest of the field is right around halfway through the lap. Yeah, in the middle of sector 2 right now, basically.
Yeah, they're pulling up to the start of sector 3. You can see Michaels there on the minimap, just racing his way through sector 1 and sector 2. So I wouldn't be too surprised if maybe they're calling for drivers to slow down a bit more to give Michaels a chance to catch up. Thankfully, he should be on the lead lap. He should not be a lap down like he was prior.
Yeah, he is now on the lead lap. He has already done a full lap basically at speed.
Well, he's getting to the end of that back straight and about to close out sector 2. I'm wondering if Felion's been given the go-ahead, and it looks like he has, so back into Indianapolis we go. Felion trying to get the jump on his competitors the best he can, so Ferrari 1-2 as we get into the restart. The rest of the pack is going to file down through this front straight. You can see the Bentley of Sion all over the tail end of Coelho as we go down into turn 1. It looked like a bit of a move there for the Bentley, but nothing to come of it. Most drivers right now just looking to survive the restart, and for the time being, they have a couple drivers running a bit wide onto the dirt, but keeping the cars pointed in the right direction. In the back, though, Casper Lair losing a position here to Hearn, but not quite done yet. Going to try to get the move done around the outside, but is going to have to just slot into P12. Pretty good restart, though. Hearn going a little bit wide there, missing his brake point a little bit. And Lair looked for a bit of an advantage, but nothing came of it, unfortunately. So we hop back up. Vining has done a pretty good job of catching up to Parks and Skyen as well onto Coelho. So it looks like 4, 5, 6 may be the place to be.
Already a sizable lead for Felgen as well, already up to 1.2 seconds to Parks. And then right behind Parks, still, half a second to Vining. Then we go down to 8/10 to Coelho, so the field is already starting to thin out a bit.
That is, we've got Coelho going wide there at the end, or at the start of Sector 3. A little bit of a wiggle there for the Audi. And now Skyen finds himself with some Audi company as Delilah Hazel's going to try to make a move, stick around the outside, running as far to the wall as she can as they head onto the front straight, both trying to get a little bit of a toe, and actually it's the Audi ahead by just a little bit as we head down into turn 1, and actually the move does get done. Skyen having to slot behind, looks for a move down the inside, but not going to go for it yet. And in the background, we do see Laer with a move down the inside of Hearn, but there is just not enough speed under that Audi right now to make a move stick as they go a little switcheroo action here through turns 2 and 3, but Hearn remaining in that P11 position.
That is exactly what I was looking forward to. You can really battle through this first sector. And we're seeing a battle between Pardus and Cuthbert right now. Quite a bit of damage on Cuthbert, but here we go. Inside for this very awkward exit of turn 7. Gets a slightly better exit, but still side by side. Actually a lot more straight line speed from that Honda of Pardus, as we can see. Definitely not helped by the damage we can see on Cuthbert's car. But Cuthbert does hold it around the outside of the next corner. And now here we go. This is a very, very tricky part to be side by side in. Oh, close together. But in the end, Cuthbert does look like he comes out on top, but then goes wide into the final corner of the second sector, and Pardus really takes that position.
Yep, same with Humans, and even Hearn's getting in on this action. He's going to have the inside line for this next corner. At the start of turn 3, Cuthbert very late on the brakes. That damage on his car is, of course, from the contact with Michaels at the start of this race. But he is just under attack for what seems like every single position, gaining and losing as we head onto the front straight. Hearn is going to have some of that slipstream. Actually opts for a quite different line there, trying to get a little bit more exit speed, but not enough. He's looking to the inside here, but is just not close enough for a move down into turn 1. Cuthbert remaining in that P10. Felgen already over 2 seconds ahead of Parks. You saw him just exit shot there as we switch cameras over, and there he goes again. So Felgen really just stretching his legs right now and opening up this gap. So Parks is the lone Ferrari under attack right now. Chris Vining doing what he can to try and close this gap up, and Coelho as well joining us in the background of the shot. Not quite close enough for him, Hazel, Skyen, and even Cairns. So these drivers settling in nicely, although Cuthbert, it looks like, has the Porsche of Hearn a lot closer than before. That slipstream into play, into the backstretch we go. Not enough room, not close enough for the 131 Porsche to make a move just yet.
Over a bit wide there, but still able to keep the position. I can see Cuthbert is struggling a lot with that damage right there, and I can understand that. So wondering when he will come inside the pits. The pit window is open, but it is still very early in the race, and Indy is one of those tracks where tire wear is very, very high, so you want to keep your pit stop basically until the halfway point in the race. And Cuthbert goes wide again, which sends Hearn side by side with him to the final corner. Almost that touch there. There we go. Okay, we're going side by side again through the right-hander out on the start-finish straight, and now it's basically just a drag race to the first corner. We'll see whether the Porsche actually gets quite a slow exit there. Slots in behind Cuthbert for the slipstream. Back out then to probably get a better judgment of the braking points for turn 1, and slots in behind him for turn 1 again.
Yeah, outside or at the exit of the final corner. I mean, the McLaren is one of the strongest cars in the game, top speed, acceleration, and you saw it there. Even with Hearn getting what I would call a much better line, and not a much better line there, as he goes way too wide. Even with a better line at the exit of the final corner, just could not keep up with the McLaren. Even with all that damage, this number 1-3 is still managing to keep some of the speed and grip that it normally has. Of course, not really up to optimum levels, but Cuthbert's doing a very good job of maintaining this car as best he can, nursing what he can do. And Hearn just trying to find any sort of opening. You said earlier in the broadcast, Simon, that this track is very difficult to overtake, and you really have to bank on your opponents making a mistake. But it seems like Cuthbert and Hearn are doing each of their own little mistakes and can't decide who's going to come out on top. So for right now, these two are just swapping positions or going to maintain for a while. As we head back onto the front straight, you can see, or sorry, not the front straight, it all looks the same. Cuthbert again just out-braking himself at the same corner.
Like that damage is hurting him in the corners a lot more than on the straights, which is actually quite surprising. But yeah, as I said, the basically straight line speed or a mistake from your opponent is what's gonna get you past them. But here we go. This might be a different story now. Very, very close to Cuthbert is Hearn, getting a very good slipstream. But there we go. It's not enough.
No, he thought about it and then just lifted off the accelerator a little bit to bring his car back. So that way he had a bit more reaction time. So it looks like Hearn knows that Cuthbert is struggling in a couple of these corners and just has to maintain distance and then go for a move. Right now, though, we hop back up front as Parks way on the inside here. And actually, Vining has gotten the move done. We are going to rewind this just to see what happened, as my replay is stuck. Apparently, if you do a replay, it gets stuck in the speed you had it at the last time. So that happened before, possibly just a better line onto the back straight. So the Ferraris have been split, but because of that battle, it's Fallion who's got over a 6-second gap now.
Easily controlling the race right now, but still 46 minutes to go, so as much as he's controlling the race right now, he's still got a long way ahead of him. But Coelho right now has moved up to Parks after that fight between Vining and Parks, so we might see a continuation of that with Coelho now.
Yeah, you can see Vining's already pulled out a pretty big gap to the Ferrari. Coelho very late on the brakes there, down into turn 1. Perhaps a little too late on the brakes, and almost rear-ending the Ferrari. We've got Cuthbert into the pits, most likely tires and damage as well, so he's going to be sitting there for a little bit of time as he gets that McLaren sorted out. And that does sort of end the battle with Hearn for the time being. Of course, a lot of these drivers, actually everyone else on the grid, still will have to pit at some point in the next 40.5 minutes. So we'll see where he comes out after everything is said and done. Of course, he'll be in last and most likely in traffic, but once everyone else starts getting a fresh set of rubber on those cars, we'll see if maybe he can skip around a little bit, gain a few positions, maybe get into a battle with somebody later on.
The undercut should be pretty strong here, because even at the 30-minute mark, your tires are definitely going to be going down, and you're definitely going to be losing a lot of pace from your tires. But as powerful as the undercut may be, Cuthbert is definitely going to be struggling towards the end of the race, now having to carry those tires for 45 minutes, which at Indy is not an insignificant amount of time.
No, it's not. But perhaps maybe he's just fixing damages and not going for tires. Of course, that would be maybe a bit of a questionable decision, because then you'd have to pit again. But now it looks like he has swapped onto a new set, so he'll be heading out of the pit lane right now as the field comes through onto start the 8th lap here of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We'll check out the back here. It looks like he shouldn't be coming out into traffic. That pit lane seems to be quite long.
Oh yeah, definitely losing a lap there in the pit lane. since it's not the longest lap around Indy as it is, and the pit lane is ridiculously long, especially the exit. So it's not unusual to lose a lap around here. That's not something to worry about, really.
No, and with the short lap times, it should be noted that Raidillon does have the fastest lap of a 34.6, which is pretty quick here at Indianapolis, and especially with a optimum track. His qualifying time was a, what, 34.99?
Yep, 34.99, and now 34.6, you said, on not full fuel, but probably a little more than half a tank of fuel. That is a really impressive time.
It is, and especially with before how during qualifying we had a greasy surface and then it became fast and it never really changed. So to have an optimum track surface, a lot more grip for these cars to take advantage of, and of course these drivers are going to be taking advantage of that quite nicely. Michaels, though, unfortunately picking up a 10-second penalty for what I can only assume to be the incident at the race start. Thankfully, it is before his pit stop, so it should not be too much of a problem. Just add it on, of course. Get it now, don't get it later. Don't get it at all. But if you have to get it before your pit stop. And we do see Michaels, or sorry, this is Parks actually we're on the back of. With Coelho sort of just stalking in the background. I think these drivers are getting into hot lap mode and waiting for those tires to fall off so they can go and pit.
I believe they are already falling off a bit. We already have a bunch of cars in the 36s that were previously in the 35s. But actually, well, Vining, on the other hand, has on the last lap just done his fastest lap of the session, a 35.6. But that said, you can see the difference between Felgen's fastest lap of the race at 34.6 right now. So more than a second faster than the next fastest lap of the race right now. That is an absolute statement.
It is, and you look at his last lap time, was a 35.0, and like you said, Vining's last lap, which was a 35.6. I mean, 0.6 gap on the rest of the field is quite immense, at least with your last lap. And his gap currently is looking to be almost 9 seconds, and it's probably growing more and more by the minute. And, well, these drivers, try as they might, will have to pray for some sort of Ferrari strategy blunder to even have a chance of winning this race.
And Vining has actually beaten his fastest lap of the race by 0.003 of a second. It was, however, an invalid lap, so it's not counted as his new fastest lap. But very, very strong consistency from him right now, so not really looking like he's losing the tires already. Same goes for Parks as well, who has also set his fastest lap of the race. So quite a few people very, very close to their maximum right now, actually at their maximum. On the other hand, Coelho, for example, almost a second off of his fastest lap right now. So we might be starting to get into that phase where the tires start going down for some of these drivers and not for others, depending on who's better able to save those tires and who has the more tire-friendly car.
Yeah, I know isn't the Ferrari one of the better cars at managing the tires, if memory serves?
I believe so, yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Raidillon and Parks maybe pitting a bit later than everybody else. I'm not too certain about the other cars and their tire management. I'm more of just get out there and drive the car and worry about it later. And then, you know, consequences of your actions, this, that, and the other thing. But for right now, Delilah Hazel seems to be doing a pretty stellar job of actually closing up the gap here to Coelho. The last lap for Coelho was a 36.5. And Hazel's was a 35.8, so these two definitely in a bit of a different standing with their Audis, although fastest lap does go to Coelho by just a little under 0.2 here as we head onto the front straight. He will be giving the toe to his fellow Audi, but it's going to be a question of does he want her to actually overtake or just to stick behind. Delilah Hazel, though, is going to be opting to stay behind for right now. Last laps for both of these drivers, a 36.50 for Coelho and a 35.9, so we could be seeing P4 getting traded with the 171 Audi as Coelho looks to start his or starting to struggle here on the track. Maybe the pressure is starting to get to him.
Yeah, it's definitely looking like Hazel has more pace out of the two of them right now. And we're going to see how that turns out on the next start-finish straight. The Audi has a lot of pace on the start-finish straight, but, well, on an Audi versus Audi setting, that doesn't really make a huge difference. But we can see Hazel can really, really follow Coelho closely through these corners. So, oh, actually going side by side into the second sector. Getting on the grass a bit, getting a bit squirrely. And going wide in the next corner and having to concede the position. But actually, not losing out a whole amount, because Coelho goes wide right on the next corner. So we're back together, only 2/10 between them.
Yeah, Hazel saw that door opening up and went for a move down the inside. It didn't really work as she's going on the inside here down at the start of Sector 3. A little bit of a switcheroo here for the two Audis. Coelho is going to have to concede the position, but he's coming back around the outside, and he goes way too wide onto the escape road. And
that is the pit lane.
That is the pit lane. Oh, he goes into the pits. I thought that was the escape road. So Coelho with an early pit, perhaps trying to work on the undercut from Delilah, Hazel. Cairns will be picking up a free position. Same with Sky and Partes, Humans, Hearn, and probably Lair. Probably everybody here will be grabbing a position. So now Delilah can focus on maybe getting out of New York City and closer to the finish line and far away from the Bentley as much as she can.
Yeah, that was some very valuable timing for the pit stop on Coelho's part, and 8 minutes before halfway, definitely not super early, not super late, so probably not a bad place for an undercut. And we saw he was definitely already struggling on those tires, so it only took him 22 minutes to drain the life out of those tires and decide that he had to make a pit stop. And that is what happens at Indy if you're not super careful with the tires.
Right, and you also have to take into account the fact that Hazel was just so aggressive there with the attack, you know, just trying to find any opening, force an error, get really close, make the other Audi nervous, and that definitely does chew up your tires quite a bit when you're having to maybe brake a bit later, brake a bit early, a bit heavier, maybe swerve a little bit. So perhaps this was all part of the Finn's plan right now. We'll see if she dives into the pits to try and maybe counteract Coelho, who is still in the pit lane and actually just getting out of it now. Hazel staying out, and it's Skyen who goes into the pit lane. So we'll see anyone else who decides to go in. It's Cairns opting to stay out, along with Partes. Humans as well will continue the campaign. And right now, Hearn is on the back of the BMW, so we may see a bit of a battle here starting to brew.
Not yet a dull moment at all in this race, even with this, such a small field. So you can see definitely a nice track for fighting, especially when different drivers are able to control their tires differently. We also have not a huge gap right now between Vining and Parks. Very, very close between them right now, actually. On the last lap, Parks was only 0.02 of a second faster than Vining, so we'll see if anything develops there. But yeah, closest battle definitely between Hearn and Humans right now, 0.6, and probably getting closer for Hearn.
Possibly. Last lap for Humans was a 37.4. Hearns was a 36.9. So half a second between them right now. Fastest lap, of course, going to Hearn with his faster pace overall by almost, or a little over 0.6. 36.99 for Humans, a 36.32 for Hearn. Although it seems as though perhaps the Porsche is struggling a little bit on that back straight. Maybe not the best top end, the best acceleration. But in these more technical, twisty sections, it appears to win out. So I wouldn't be too surprised if we see a bit of a lunge from Hearn, or maybe just using those slower corners to maybe gain as much time as he can.
Yeah, he looks surprisingly comfortable right now, even so late in the first stint. Right on the back of Humans right now, so let's see what kind of pace that Porsche has on the straight.
The pace on top of the slipstream, close enough for it to be taking effect, but you can see nothing much really. The BMW seems to even be punching its own little slipstream in the air in front of it, as he does open up the gap by a fair amount, although down into turn one. Hearn a little later on the brakes and is able to catch back up, but again, that gap just seesawing, going more in the favor of one driver than the other, but right onto the back bumper, it seems like, as we get ready to go onto the back straight. Hearn looking down the inside, but opting to not go for it. Human's a bit of a slide there of the back end of the BMW, and Hearn is going to go through, no questions asked. But it is not over yet, as Human's going to try to use the superior top end of that BMW. A bit of a slipstream, but not close enough. He knows he's going to lose out here in these slower sections, so try to get as close as he can and then pounce down into turn 1, or maybe Hearn makes a mistake and gives the position back.
We're getting squirrely out of that corner right now, and the gap is opening up, so unless Humans can close that gap back down onto the start-finish straight, he's gonna be out of slipstream range.
Yeah, he's certainly struggling.
Yeah, not getting through that corner very fast. Definitely already seeming to struggle on the tires. Going wide into this corner, catching with the grass. Not feeling well on those tires right now, I believe, so probably gonna see him coming in very soon as well.
Possibly, maybe the next lap or two. Parks has pulled in a little bit closer to Vining, it seems. Last lap for Vining, a 36.0. Parks, a 35.4. So, Parks definitely trying to rejoin the Ferraris in obtain or holding on to those top two pieces of real estate. Vining doing everything he can. Down the back straight we go. Does not have to worry about the Ferrari for right now, but a very strong track for the Italian manufacturer as we head through this very technical section. It seems quite tricky to get through, but these guys are doing it like it's nothing.
Yeah, once you've got the feel down, it can be quite fun and actually quite nice to go through there, but early on, if you haven't gotten much practice, then it's really tricky to get the proper line and the proper braking points, because you can't go through there with just a lift. You definitely, between those corners, want to tap the brakes a tiny bit, so similar to the S's on Suzuka, which is quite tricky to do when you haven't got much practice. But there we go, another 10th in favor of Parks, so getting quite close, definitely within slipstream range right now. We'll see which one of them pits first though, because I think that is going to be the deciding factor in this battle.
Yeah, most likely. If maybe one driver goes in, the other stays out, or maybe even mirroring the pit stops and maybe banking on your pit box being a bit sooner, you can get your tires sorted out a bit sooner than the other driver. Speaking of the pit lanes, Humans and Lair both going into the pits, so speaking of that mirroring factor, they'll both go in, ideally come out roughly the same time and get back out on track and maybe start a bit of a battle. Right now, though, the battle we get to watch here is between Vining and Parks for P2. 6/10 is the gap, and it's remained as such. Last lap for Parks was a 36.2, a 36.3 for Vining, so a 10th is all that separated them last lap. And Parks just trying to find anything he can, using as much of the racetrack as he can, just seeing where he's going to get penalized, where he's not. Probably has already done that in qualifying, or not qualifying, in practice during the weeks between last race and now. Just any time he can, Vining here, still maintaining that P1 and opting to stay out. Same with Parks, so this could be the mirror.
It's surprising, to be honest, that both are still staying out, because the undercut is quite powerful here, and you can see both of these two drivers are already losing a lot of time to their fastest laps. Actually, not that much time. That was a very, very good lap from both of them compared to the fastest laps. But surely, whoever is going to pull the trigger first has an advantage coming out of the pits on those fresh tires.
Yeah, and you have to sort of bank on... Humans, a 30-second stop go. That'll get transferred over to a, I believe, 15-second penalty. I think it's what the leagues does. It's been a while. I've kind of forgotten. So that is definitely for speeding into the pit lane. One thing we do see drivers get caught out with occasionally on track. So the penalty seconds now coming through for Humans, and it looks like he will just cop a 10-second fine for his misdemeanor. Hearn into the pits as well, and then that'll leave Felgen, Vining, Parks, Hazel, Cairns, Partez, and Michaels on the track. Michaels with the 10-second penalty, so that will get added on. So he ideally will not have to worry about that, but Human's really going to be feeling the pain with that 10-second post-pit stop penalty.
We're getting close to the pit entry once again. We're now more than halfway through the race, so past your usual pitting point. And there we go. Vining dips into the pits. Parks stays out. Getting caught out actually a tiny bit, going into the final corner, getting on the grass a bit and losing quite a bit of time. So if Vining can put a solid pit stop together, then he might have the advantage there. But that was a bit of a messy pit entry, I think. I just caught the last second.
Yeah, it looked a little bit scrappy. Hopefully it was slow enough to not get a penalty. We'll have to just wait and see. So now what Parks has to do, if Parks opts to go in, he has to put in quite the lap and then perhaps hope that Vining comes out into traffic and will have to fight his way through. So Parks right now on the charge. We look up very quickly to Felion, who has just opened up a massive gap. Of course, this gap here is not really indicative of anything outside of the fact that the guy who was behind him in P2 is now in the pit lane, so from him to Parks is 16 seconds. But we'll see if Felion goes in. Perhaps Felion's going to give Parks a bit of a guide as to when to pit, so we'll see. Maybe they try to pit together, maybe they pit separately.
Quite a lot of cars actually still without a pit stop.
Yeah,
let's go down the fields.
A little less than half. Felion, though, staying out, so the only drivers at this point, Parks as well staying out, it's Delilah, Hazel, Yvonne Cairns, Rudius Partez, and Michaels.
Parks is coming in.
Parks is coming in, yes he is. So this will be crucial. He has to nail his break point. He has to nail the pit entry. I don't know if he did.
That was solid. That was very, very close to the edge, but that was still within the limits. So that was a good pit entry. Let's see if that was enough to offset the undercut from Vining.
Well, Delilah Hazel into the pits now. So we look to Chris Vining. He is about 30 some odd seconds. Oh.
And I don't believe that was enough to offset the undercut, because Parks has missed his pit box and has actually had to reverse into his pit box a tiny bit. So that has cost him a bunch of time.
It has 30
Surely
seconds.
That is going to spit him out behind Vining just then.
It will, and he's got to do all that work again to get around the Mercedes. So this is not what you wanted. Chris Vining right now getting ready to start the third sector of the track here, the Brickyard, as it is dubbed. So it looks like, yeah, unless Parks gets extremely lucky, and actually Parks is back on the move, so this may be very, very, very close. We have
he is going to be crawling for a long time.
Oh, it's brutal. It is such an insanely long pit lane. You also have to take into account, normally there's far more cars in the pit lane, but that's because it's the Indianapolis 500, and you've got, well, high speeds, and you need to get back up to speed. Chris Vining right now is coming down the front straight, so we'll see if he can get ahead of Parks. As we get into turn one, you see Delilah Hazel there, and actually Parks out of the pit lane now, but he is so far behind Vining, and that, if he didn't miss that pit box, he could have come out ahead, but he is already back on the attack.
Very, very close. So the battle resumes exactly where it left off. Both of them not having perfect pit stops, and it's gonna spit them out exactly where, well, where we left off. So we got a beautiful battle to watch once again for these final 25 minutes, probably.
Yeah, we do. I'm sure Parks must be kicking himself, thinking if I didn't overshoot my pit box, I could have been a lot closer now. And well, he's still got 24, almost 25 minutes to work with. We've got Felion into the pits for his mandatory pit stop, so it just leaves Cairns and Michaels out on track at the moment. Felion is on the move out of that pit lane, so he should have plenty of time to come out ahead of his opponents, as his opponents are getting ready to not get back onto the front straight. Almost baited me there for a second, but Felion should come out far ahead of these two behind. So this will put him back into the lead once Cairns and Michaels decide to serve their mandatory stops. They still have another about 20 minutes to go for them.
Quite impressive to see them running on those old tires for that long. Though, to be fair, Michaels has had a pit stop already, so he has a slightly lesser amount of time to run on those. But there we go. Cairns coming up to the pit entry. Is he going to go for it? He sure is.
Yep, he's had enough of those tires.
Penultimate car coming into the pits only leaves Michaels out on the track right now.
Yep, Michaels, yeah, he's opting to stay out another lap or two. Or no, sorry, this is not the front straight. And
it's hard to differentiate, huh?
Yeah, it all looks the same. Quilio, sorry, Quilio and Skyen actually. Oh, Cairns into the, or not Cairns, excuse me, Michael's into the pit. So, yeah, this will spit them out probably about midfield. So, Felgen will be getting his lead back from the BMW as we see Ryan Cuthbert there just passing on through. Right now, we should hop back and pay attention to the battle for P6. Skyen's done a pretty good job of staying with Quilio. Last lap was definitely in favor of the Audi, a 36.5. Or no, sorry, I read that wrong. It's actually the Bentley that gets to come out on top in terms of last lap times with the 36.1. It is Quilio with that 36.5. So the pace is definitely a bit different for these two. Vining has started to open up the gap to Parks. So perhaps Parks just taking a little bit more time. You think on fresher rubber he'd be able to close the gap, but he's just struggling right now to do so.
It is a tricky track to be consistent on, so tires are not the only thing that's going to make you struggle to get a clean lap together.
No, definitely not. And Quilio actually getting a pretty good run out of the final corner and was able to pull away. So at this point, everybody has served their pit stops. Michaels did have that 10-second penalty, which is why he was sitting there for a little bit longer than everybody else. Cairns out of the pits, and Michaels making his way down.
Back on the move right now. Let's see where he comes out.
Well, he's got, as we hop on board, that is such a long pit lane. It's not quite a highway to hell, more like a highway to purgatory, as you are just going at a snail's pace across the line. So he is going to be coming out in P9, it looks like. No, P12, right in front of him.
Oh, and there spins.
Oh, that was very, very close.
That is not what you want to see coming out of the pit lane, but that was
definitely not. That is terrifying. Speaking of terrifying, despite the Bentley not looking like the prettiest thing in the world, it is certainly quite scary for Quilio here as that gap is closed up again. So seesawing between an advantage for both of these drivers. Quilio using all of his experience behind the wheel of the Audi and all that practice to try to open up the gap, and this guy just seems to be on a Sunday stroll half the time when he's, you know, out and about, but still able to catch up. And Vining now has had quite the charge right now, is pulling away a little bit. Of course, right now it doesn't look like it because of the braking zone, but as we come out, that gap will slowly and surely just climb right back up, sitting at about 8/10 right now. Although Parks trying to claw his way back. He does have the faster previous lap by 2/10. 35.3 for Vining, 35.1 for Parks. So perhaps if they can keep it up, this could be another battle brewing again for P2. But it's Quilio. Just, it seems like Quilio can gain an advantage on these straights, but once you get into sectors 1 and 3, it just all goes away from him.
The Audis are weapons on the straights for sure. Not sure how it deals with corners compared to the Bentley, so I can't say which car has the advantage there, but in terms of what we're seeing on the road right now, it definitely looks like Skyen is closing up always in the corners. But hard to get close enough on the straights then, of course, so he is going to be hoping for a mistake from Quilio.
Yeah, he will. You can see it right there, too, just how close he's getting to the Audi, and just not close. It's never close enough for a move, and then you have to worry about, well, once he gets around, he has to maintain that, and you get onto the front straight, and you get into the slipstream, and Coelho can just take it back. So Skyen is going to have to bank on a bit of an error to try and make something happen. We do hop back in the field a bit, as Cairns has been struggling to get Partez away from him. Cairns looks to have had a bit of a blunder last lap, unless it was his pit stop, as it's a 2-minute 3. So we'll look and see what the times are looking like. Hearn also trying to join the battle. So lap times are as follows: a 37.2 for the McLaren, a 36.7 for Honda, and then a 36.2 for the Porsche. So these three are starting to close up on each other and are possibly going to do battle here. You can see just how far behind Hearn is, though. So Hearn is really going to have to bank on these two fighting to catch up. Meanwhile,
fastest lap, well, new fastest lap of the race by Felgen, a 34.5 right now. That is a lap time I'm sure he would be proud to do in qualifying. Actually, 4/10, more than 4/10 faster than what he did in qualifying. Sure, on a slower lap or a slower track, but with less fuel as well. So, impressive pace from him right now. But then Parks is not amazingly far off of that pace. And he is having to deal with the winding in front of him, so still just about the same gap we saw when we left off. So I think this is going to be a battle that's going to be accompanying us for the rest of this race.
Absolutely. Drivers, everything they can. Everybody's gotten their pit stops out of the way, so barring a bit of an incident, they should be all set for the remaining 17.5 minutes here at Indianapolis. Just down the front straight, Skyen with that slipstream, but just can't. He can match the Audi a little bit, but not enough to really make a move.
He would have to get very, very close to the final sector. Otherwise, I'm not seeing a lot of chances for him.
No, not at all. And running even a little bit wide there. Gonna lose time. He's just sort of squirming into these corners, trying to maybe find a little bit of a gap, maybe force the door to open a little bit more. But Coelho, nerves of steel, holding on right now by a thread to P4. And as we go on to this backstretch, he's going to be using the Audi's speed to his advantage. It looked like for a moment he was going to try to stick in the middle, but he knows exactly what he's up against, and he knows where he is stronger. So might as well take an advantage as he go over the rumble strips, or over the sausage curbs rather. And that's actually going to throw him off a little bit. So Skyen's a lot closer, a little bit of a switcheroo as he gets the inside line into the corner. He's going to make it stick, and he does, and he gets ahead as we head into this heavy braking zone. And Skyen, what a move. This is, Simon, this is what you talked about. You make a mistake and someone's capitalizing almost immediately.
That is what he's been waiting for. Mistakes are costly, especially in the second sector. If you mess up one of those corners, you mess them all up, and that is what's going to cost you the amount of time. That's going to lose you the place. But he is still very close to Skyen, and as I said, the Audi is a weapon on the straight. You can see him closing up. So this might not be over at all.
No, he looks to the inside.
He's trying to go for it.
Later on the brakes, but just not close enough for the move. So he's going to duck back in behind.
Yes, Skyen leaves him the space, but Coelho at the same time is also trying to be cautious and pulls out of it. So things are as they were. We'll see if that develops any further, or if Skyen is able to pull away. And it looks like he might be, because Coelho is getting squirrely on the grass and almost immediately opening that gap up to more than a second.
Yeah, he wants to make up all that time he's lost, but in his efforts to do so, he's pushing the Audi a little too hard. So for Skyen right now, he's as safe as can be, but he's still got 15 minutes to go. We hop back. It's Cairns and Partez who have pulled away from Hearn a good bit, actually. The gap has opened up. It was a little less than, I believe, a second, and now it's a little over that as we head onto this lap. Last lap for Cairns was a 36.4. Partez a 36.5, so very close between these two. The Honda definitely one of the big swingers in the top end and acceleration department, but so is the McLaren. Wood Cairns for right now is just holding on to P7. doesn't seem to be under too much pressure right now. Partez probably just biding his time until later on in the race to take advantage. And you can see they're just opening up that gap to Hearn. I mean, everything Hearn tries is just for naught, as these two incredibly strong cars were able to make complete trivial work of his efforts.
And very, very similar lap times right now. Only 400s between them. Actually 400 slower just then for Partez compared to Kearns. So it's not over and done with. It's not going to be easy for Partez to get past. As you said, both cars quite strong on the straights. Both cars also not the strongest on the brakes at the same time.
No,
so
definitely not.
It's hard to say which one of these has the advantage right now. Very much got to be down to driver skill and tire life, I would imagine.
Most likely, just maintaining focus. You know, you can have all the driving skills in the world, but if you can't channel them when you need to, then what's the point? But with these drivers, the caliber they are, it's not really a question of are they able to, because week in and week out, they are able to show us that they can keep it locked down and keep these cars going, even when they are under attack or you know, with a threat looming.
And it's not easy to keep focus on this track. There is no single easy corner around here. For every single corner, you need to be on top of your game. So doing that for 60 minutes without making a slip is not easy. But I gotta say, it's looking like Falcon has it down right now. Last lap, 34.5, still in a league of his own. 21 seconds gap behind to Vining. Actually, looking at Vining, Parks has lost quite a bit of ground to him. 1.8 seconds between them now, so looks like Parks made a bit of a mistake on the last lap. Yeah, 36.5 compared to 35.4 from Vining.
Oh, and more mistakes.
Yeah, a little bit running wide, losing quite a bit of time right now as well. So that battle has definitely been paused. We'll see if Parks has the pace at the end of this race to close back up.
Yeah, it's just I don't know, maybe a case like we saw with Coelho after Skyen got around him, just trying to make up time where you can, but unfortunately just making things a bit more difficult for yourself. So Viney, you can see that gap has opened way up, and we saw a similar gap earlier on in the race, but I mean, it took so long for it to come down, and I believe that would be a lot longer than is currently available on the clock. So unless Vining makes some uncharacteristic error, this could be a comfortable P2 for him. As yeah, just look at that. It's a huge gap, over 3 seconds between them. Let me jump back to Karen's. Partez maintains distance. Hearn in the background as well. Last lap for Karen's was at 36.2, and then a 36.6 for Partez.
Going very deep into the right-hander in the third sector and losing a little bit of time as well. So that gap has opened up as well to around 1.5 seconds. So all of the impressive battles that we've been looking forward to have been put on hold right now. But that has actually put up, moved Hearn up to the back of Partez a tiny bit. Still about a second between them, but not impossible to overcome if Hearn puts in a solid lap. Let's see how that develops.
It's a story that only time will tell. We hop back up here into the battle for P4, sort of a battle for P4, as Skyen leads from Coelho and Hazel. The two Audis sitting just outside of that fourth place position, although it would be a top 5 for Coelho, which would be a very good result for him, and obviously Delilah Hazel wants a piece of the pie as well. Ben Humans here with 10 seconds with fellow BMW driver Michaels behind. As long as Michaels can maintain this this little gap, then of course the 10-second penalty applied will bump him up into a top 10 finish. So Humans will unfortunately, most likely, barring a few unlucky throws of the dice, will be missing out on a top 10 finish, and Michaels will be gifted that. But still 9.5 to go. Anything can happen. Not time to count him out just yet.
I have news for you, by the way, concerning Cuthbert. I did talk earlier about the race when he made that early pit stop that it might come back to bite him with those tires, but the tires haven't been the problem. It's actually been the fuel. He hasn't apparently adjusted his fuel enough to fill up for those 50 minutes, and he's just told us in the chat that he forgot to fuel up enough and has had to do another pit stop, which has moved him right into 13th place right now.
Yeah, I did see him go into the pits earlier. I was going to comment on it, but just unfortunately I didn't. So right now we see onto the front straight as Humans sort of just lets Michaels by. He knows what's going to happen, and, well, better just to let him through now and focus on building a gap up to Lair of at least 10 seconds so that way he can keep the position. But, yeah, 8.6. So Humans has a bit of work to do. Maybe use the slipstream of Michaels to open something up.
Yeah, solid strategy to let Michaels pass when the position is lost as it is, and then try to follow Michaels and copy his moves, but it doesn't seem to be going super well for him. Going a bit wide in the first sector, touching with the grass. Already a second back from Michaels, so far out of slipstream range. Now, the only thing that might still benefit him is to be able to just, you know, get a bit of a second wind by seeing Michaels in front of him and be able to push a little more. But it's going to be hard for him to keep that gap to Layer, or at least open it back up, because that gap has already gone down below 10 seconds.
It is. But, you know, maybe something, like you said, that second win, seeing what your competitor is doing, your fellow driver, as it were, and making the best of a bad situation. 7.5 minutes to go here. Skyen is maintaining this P4 quite nicely. Last lap for him, a 36.9. Although it's Coelho on top of that game with a 36.5. And Delilah Hazel as well, despite being about a couple seconds back, had a 36.5. Or sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. I actually looked at everything wrong. So it was a 36.9 for Skyen, a 36.5 for Coelho, and a 35.7 for Hazel. So Hazel definitely finding pace where these other two drivers aren't. And even Partez here has lost a load of time to Hearn, or to Cairns rather, and Hearn is pulling in a bit closer, but not really close enough for anything just yet. A little under 7 minutes now at this point. None of the back straight we go. Partez going to utilize that Honda's top end beautifully to open up that gap once more. Even with the slipstream, Hearn is just unable to do anything.
I'm checking real quick what has actually happened to Hazel to put her that far down, because she was in contention for a podium earlier, and then after the pit stop has moved down to P8 for a bit. So I'm going to try to figure out what's happened there.
Well, Hazel's
but
actually...
she is definitely making her way back up.
Oh, she is. Yeah, this could be on for a P5 because while Skyen's up ahead, he knows that there's going to have to be a bit of defense from Coelho, which will open up his gap quite nicely. Delilah Hazel there was a bit later on the brakes, almost overshot her brake point and wasn't able to get the car rotated in time. Thankfully does, but a lot closer now. So if you're Coelho, you're starting to sweat a little bit. Do you focus on trying to catch up to the Bentley, or do you focus on defending from your fellow Audi driver? It's definitely a bit of a questionable decision to make, or not a questionable, but a difficult decision to make. And right now, Felion getting around some back markers. Thank you for switching that. That was really cool there, broadcast controller. But yeah, this is heating up. I think Skyen is going to take a huge advantage of this and just start to pull away because he knows all the defense that's got to come out from the Audi behind. But we get into the last 5 minutes. The pit window, of course, is going to be closing up right about now. So if you haven't gotten your mandatory stop done, well, you're a little late. But thankfully, it is green across the board for these drivers. Mandatory stops completed, new tires fitted, some for fuel, some getting some damage sorted out. But everybody has been doing an excellent job of keeping their cars pointed in the right direction for the most part. As we head down the front straight, Skyen, Coelho, Hazel, 4, 5, and 6. This battle not done yet.
4 minutes to go. Probably, let's have a look where the leader is. Yeah, let's say after this lap, still probably 3 more to go for Hazel to make those 2 overtakes to move back up into P4. We'll see how that goes. And I haven't been able to find anything super identifiable that has went wrong with Hazel. I just think she might have missed her pit box a tiny bit and had to get moved and lost a few seconds there. But nothing amazing, nothing major.
Well, definitely that's what you want if you're gonna, unfortunately, make a mistake. But, you know, as long as you're able to get back into the fight, then it shouldn't be too much of an issue. We saw it earlier with Parks missing his pit box, but he is still a second back from Vining. So his endeavors have been a little bit dicey for Delilah. She gets a bit sideways there, and all that work she's done has just been thrown away as she sees Coelho pulling away in the distance, same with Skyen. So work that was looking to be a potential last lap battle for P3, or sorry, for P5, is now looking to be a bit more out of reach.
That's well saved, that little slide, and I don't think it's going to be too tricky for her to close the gap back down.
Oh, you see her using just all the track she can, a little bit over the grass, to try and gain all that time. A wider exit, carry more speed through the corner, but definitely not what she wanted to do. We check back with Partez very quickly as we see her maintaining a little bit more than half a second to the Honda and onto the front straight again. This is where the Honda shines. You have all that power under the hood, and you can just sort of throw it, and you see Cairns there in the foreground disappearing from shot. He's got quite a comfortable gap to work with, so he knows these two are probably going to end up fighting at some point. So might as well just get these laps done and worry about it later. Felgen right now is coming around, so we are going to have 2 more laps after this. The driver's not done quite yet, but what a drive that the Norwegians had so far. From the start of the race to now has been more or less a cakewalk, as Vining is not even anywhere close to him.
Are you trying to jinx him?
No, I'm not. Stop accusing me of such heinous crimes. But no, it really has been just a beautiful race for him. You saw the pace he had in qualifying. He is the only driver to knock it into the 34s. Everybody else has been struggling, and struggling continues for Coelho as he misses breakpoint, goes wide, and reels Delilah in a little bit closer behind. Not what you want if you're trying to maintain your position.
There we go. This is going to the very end. Skyen has a little bit of a buffer right now, 1.2 seconds in front of Coelho. But Coelho is very much in range of Hazel, so this is going to get interesting for these final 2 laps.
They are at 8/10.
Yellow flag somewhere.
No,
oh, it's Layer having spun. Don't think... Let's have a look. Oh, he has pretty much lost a position for that, though. Because he was within those 10 seconds to Humans to benefit from his penalty. But that spin has put him well outside of those 10 seconds, so Humans is going to be celebrating right now. Layer is going to be kicking himself, because that has cost him an invisible position. That little spin down the quote-unquote back straight.
Yeah, 16, almost 17 seconds now. So for Humans, it's looking like he's going to finish behind his BMW co-driver. And the final lap has been called, so Felgen has just one more tour of the circuit to go. Same with Delilah Hazel. She is pushing that Audi as much as she can later on the brakes here, trying to catch up to Coelho. You see how much closer she is, almost giving a little bit of a kiss onto the rear bumper there of the number 44 Audi. Skyen probably knows he's home free. He's got nothing to worry about as we head down towards the end of the 3rd sector. Delilah Hazel throwing it down the inside. There's contact there, and she is going to slow down to give the position back. She knows that it wasn't going to be a fair overtake and gives it back. That could have been the last chance for the Finn to gain a P5, but there's still one more lap to go. Coelho, he's weaving up and down the straight. He's trying to just find a way to break the toe.
That is naughty. That is not what we want to see.
No, it is not. Pick a line and stick to it. Down into turn 1. Hazel just throwing it over the inside there of the turn 1 sausage curb and tries to get a slightly different exit, but it doesn't really work out all that well for her. She is still hunting down Coelho who has completely lost sight of Skyen onto the dirt, and she is pushing that Audi as much as she can, trying to find any sort of opening in this defense of Coelho. She's gotten a couple, but they haven't been clean. And, well, ladies and gentlemen, off screen, we are not even going to look at it because this is exciting stuff. It's Felion who is going to be crossing the line in a comfortable finish. He has got over a 20-second gap down to Vining, and Parks is unable to overtake Vining here unless the Mercedes spins out at some point. But this battle for P5, Delilah Hazel trying to get into that top 5. At the very least, she'll get a top 10, but she is going to want so much more than that, and I don't know if there's enough time. You can see the gap. She's made an error, and another one to add, and she's turning on the blinkers, perhaps throwing up the white flag in defeat. So Coelho, despite having some errors, will manage to hold on and will claim a P5. Behind him, it's Hazel P6. And another amazing little pirouette there from the Finnish driver as she did at the end of qualifying. She's very, very consistent, and we love it. And Karen's here across in a very nice P7, and Partez has held off Hearn very well, P8 and P9. And was that Karen's going into the wall? No, perhaps thought about helping move the Audi, but doesn't. So all that's left on track is Michaels for a P10, the number 32 BMW, doing a very good job of keeping it together, and Cuthbert will be around in 13th. But your top 3 is Valiant, Vining, Parks, and then Skyen, Coelho into 5, and Hazel, Cairns, Partez, Hearn, and Michaels top 10. But what a race we had, and a little spin there at the end for Cuthbert, adding a little bit more damage onto that McLaren, because why not? It's the end of the race.
That was a beautiful one to watch, even with only 13 cars. We had basically everything you'd wish for. We had one driver absolutely in a league of their own and showing everyone else how it's done, and showing us basically how fast you can possibly be at Indy. But we've also had a lot of amazing battles, especially this one between Hazel and Coelho, going right down to the line with both of them throwing everything they had at the wall. We'll see if there's gonna be a little bit of a post-race show right here, with the weaving by Coelho might be looked at by the stewards. We'll see if anything happens there. But either way, that was a beautiful show to watch by the both of them.
It was, but you could argue that the move, the dive on the inside may offset it. We don't know. We're not going to try to play stewards. We're only here to talk about racing. But ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick look at everything. So overall, it is... whoops, there we go. Overall, it's Felion, Vining, and Parks, your top 3. And then for the Pro-Am category, Parks, Cairns, and Partez. Only 13 drivers, but what a show they put on. So, right now, these drivers get ready for the last race of the season at Paul Ricard, getting everything loaded onto the plane and across the Atlantic for the final round. Simon, closing thoughts?
Well, I think I've just already brought you my closing thoughts. Solid race, everything you could possibly want from a race, even with only 13 drivers. So that was a beautiful penultimate round of the championship. I'm very much looking forward to the final one with what's it gonna be actually?
It's Paul Ricard. It's a super sprint, so we'll have that first race, and then another round of qualifying for everyone who finished outside the top 12, and then a reverse grid order for the top 12, and then a final race to cap things off. So we'll see who's ready to throw down the gauntlet in France. It'll certainly be something to watch for. But ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be signing off here in the booth. I will be back later tonight to cast the North American splits. I'll be joined by Kevin Parody and Sam Raworth for the second split of the evening. But ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of myself, Simon Bauer, and everybody here at the OOR, we'd like to thank you, of course, for your continued support. You guys have been amazing. You've been beautiful. And we hope to see you again next week at Paul Ricard for the final race of Season 10 of the Octane Online Racing Sprint Series.
Have a good night.